See, I can see y'all have a lot to talk about, but I'd really like to get on with the show now.
We're good on this end anytime you want to start.
Well, you're the interviewer, right?
Well, yeah. Let's see.
Hello, and welcome to another groundbreaking story from the Watchman News. What do you want me to say? Do you want me to start it off?
Yeah, go ahead.
Hello, and welcome to more groundbreaking information from the Watchman News. And today we're going to be interviewing me, SustenanceNCovering, a guy with a YouTube channel.
Wait, YouTube hasn't kicked you off yet?
I'm still here. What are you talking about?
Oh, YouTube trying to get rid of as many different channels that tell the truth.
Oh, yeah. Well, you know, one of the things I've noticed, and I guess, but there's some kind of law I'm not supposed to talk about the money that I make. That's like in the contract when you join up with them. And but I can tell you this, that the money I'm getting now is about 1/4 of what I was getting initially, and I have twice as many subscribers now as I did when I monetized. So explain that to me.
Oh yeah. Now are they demonetizing you on a mass level?
Yeah. Well, for one thing, I can tell you this: I only get a check every other month. I haven't got 2 checks in a row in a long time, and it just drop. But here's the whole point. If you're going to get really good advertisers like Pepsi Cola and that kind of stuff, you pretty much have to be spewing out the same mindless dribble that the other Pepsi Cola people are putting out. And if you're the guy that's making people think, you're going to get Chuck Shoe Repair, on 25th Avenue. So you're not going to get the same kind of money.
Right, exactly. Have you thought about any other types of platforms?
Yeah, somebody recently sent me, what is it? Is it VidMe? Is that the new one that everybody's using? And it's actually one of my subscribers. He went in and set up the account. Then he downloaded a bunch of my videos in high definition, and he uploaded them to the VidMe account. And every week I get a message from VidMe saying somebody subscribed to you, or Bill left a comment or something like that. And I go to the channel and I can't figure it out. When I started this, YouTube was pretty much intuitive. You went there and there's a picture, and obviously if you click on it, videos start playing, and there was a button there that said upload, and if you clicked on that, it would walk you through uploading a video. And now YouTube is, I don't know, it looks like some kind of video game that a 13-year-old would play. It's like no way in the world I'll ever figure that out.
Oh, wow.
You ever try to play? You probably are a video game player, but they have these things where these guys are running and they pick up a pocket knife and start stabbing something, or they shoot or throw a grenade. I would be there with the joystick, and the guy would just be like, bam, walking into a wall. That's as far as I could get. I couldn't figure anything else. And that's the way this VidMe is, and the way YouTube is now. If I had joined YouTube today, the only way I would get through it is to get Aletoledo to set the whole thing up for me.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, I can't figure this stuff out. Well, you've got a YouTube channel. Didn't yours just recently upgrade again?
What about their YouTube channel? Did it
just upgrade? I mean, mine, it isn't on all my computers, but 2 of my computers, suddenly YouTube looks completely different. The background's different, the letters are different, how you access things is different, and I can't find. Fortunately, I've got like shortcuts on my computer for how to get to my message board, and how to get to the upload board, and how to get to my home page, and how to get to, YouTube in general, because I can't figure it out from just going there. When I get there, I pretty much got to turn off and use the other links to get to the other, to access the other parts of it.
Oh, okay. Yeah. They've made a lot of changes. I had to reset up all my screens, and it's just been a nightmare.
Well, yeah, when you're running, when you're trying to do the things like I remember years ago doing something similar to this, where there were several of us on, line at the same time. And I think we were doing it through Google Chat, maybe. Maybe it was a YouTube thing, but it was so easy. You said, okay, I want to have multiple people on the screen, and the computer said, okay, press this button. You pressed it, and there was multiple people on the screen. And that automatically went straight to YouTube. Now you've got to download some kind of program, which I couldn't do. I had to get that done by Aletoledo once again. And even for the first 4 or 5 shows that we did, I would have to contact him 5 minutes in advance so he could talk me through just turning the thing on after I owned it. So
yeah, it's messed up. I know there's been a lot of issues with live shows buffering and stuff like that via the RTMP connection. So that's been an issue too.
Well, I always think that maybe I was designed to be doing this like Moses. What did he do? He grew a beard, and then he cut all the limbs off of a stick. And he just went walking. That's me. Except I got bad arthritis, so I can't walk across the country hollering at people. I've got to have the internet to holler at people.
Right. Yep. Yeah, it's kind of nuts how it's all. I joined a platform called Steemit, which so far seems to be a pretty solid thing, other than the fact that they don't support live streaming yet. It's kind of still in beta phase, but it seems to be a really solid platform with a lot of potential. So, and it's running off what they call that blockchain, which if I sat there and tried to explain it to you, I'd only be feeding you a bunch of BS, because I don't understand it all. But it's more or less it's subscriber, it's viewer supported. So it's not like with YouTube right now with the advertisers. Well, they claim the advertisers are pulling out because of content, and I think the truth is the economy's tanking, and advertisers are just pulling out. Period. Out of everywhere. Jen gets magazines, and like say Time magazine, she gets Time, and we laugh whenever she gets a new magazine, because we don't call it a magazine anymore. We call it a pamphlet, because they're so thin, and it's because people are pulling out of advertising right now.
I believe that, because I saw some kind of YouTube thing a while back where they were saying that advertisers who they have these companies that do what is that called, where they send out these forms and you say, yes, I watched Channel 3 at 4:30 and it was the dating game, and then I went to Channel 7 and watched the news, and
the Nielsen
and
the Nielsen
yeah,
system.
Nielsen's ratings. Well,
yep.
According to that, it's like nobody's I guess however they figure it, people who are using the internet and not using TV are not the kind of people that go out and buy junk. So
right,
it's like, why advertise to people? Because that's the way it's always been for us. We get these Nielsen rating things all the time. My wife fills them out, and a large part of that is when you go to the store, are you likely to be affected by the advertising, or do you buy whatever is the cheapest? Well, obviously, I'm on welfare, so we're not worrying about name brands or anything when we're out there trying to get. Plus, I don't think they have a name brand package of 50 pounds of rice. If you get 50 pounds of rice, in general, it's a giant bag and it says rice on it, and then there may be a barcode.
Right. Yep. It's kind of crazy the way it's all set up. So what do you think?
The world is going down. Sears is like an institution, and every day another Sears goes out of business.
Yeah.
Every day another Kmart goes out of business. And right now the big thing is Walmart, because Walmart came in, they were able to go overseas, make some deals with some governments to enslave half the planet's population, and so we get to go in there and buy 11-cent shoes, because some guy somewhere is chained to a cement slab making shoes all day for food.
Right.
And but eventually that's going to run out. The slaves are going to get sick and die, and they're not going to reproduce. And then what do you do? So yeah, what point is there to advertise when there are no more products, which is the world we're headed for?
Right. Now, what's your thoughts? What's going on in North Korea right now.
Oh, I don't watch TV shows too much. I know they got some airplanes, and I think one of them made a bomb or something over there, but I don't think their airplanes can drive all the way to America. So, and if they did, if they made it to America, I'm sure they would hit something like, bug tussle. They wouldn't come down here where I'm living and bomb me.
Right.
Bug tussle's famous because it was on, the Beverly Hillbillies. Our town never was on any of that, Green Acres or any of that, so they wouldn't know about us.
With the threats that have been made against Guam, we have been trying to push a drive to be able to rename Chicago to Guam, but so far no luck.
Well, is that the thing? Is that North Korea is threatening Guam? Because I think Guam is close enough to North Korea that they could bomb that.
Yeah. Actually, they've got an ICBM now that can actually reach the U.S. mainland. So,
according to the popular culture, it's like back in the 1800s, the Native Americans were developing nuclear weapons. Of course, after we wiped them out and put them all into slave labor camps, then suddenly it was discovered that in fact they didn't have nuclear weapons, and we were never in any real danger. and then of course, in recent times, Saddam Hussein had some weapons of mass destruction, and once again, just like in the Native American deal, it turned out to be a false alarm.
Right, exactly.
I mean, you think about the countries that America attacks. Really, honestly, I think they're talking about Venezuela now, which is kind of a big country, but most of the countries we attack are like Libya. It's like attacking. That's not even like attacking New Jersey. That's like attacking one county in New Jersey. They're a national security threat. Yeah, they're developing fire and the wheel.
Right, exactly.
We've got to do something before they start building, SR-71 Blackbirds.
Right. I kind of have a question, and we spoke on this topic a few different times, and it almost, I think, I'm not nearly as well versed on you as you on it, but you've been speaking a lot lately about the positioning of the planets and whatnot. Do you think that we've talked a little bit about my thoughts on pole shift? Do you think that any of that is related?
Yeah, it's all related. I mean, here's the thing: is that over thousands of years of human history, cultures have carved images into stones and have built monuments to things, and so we, it's not like today where we can go plug in a CD from the 5th century BC and see color movies of what those people were involved in or what their sky looked like, and no one really left written records of precisely where everything was, with one exception. And now the pole shifts that the pole shift people are talking about is like the whole planet flipping upside down or something. But the reality is that the scientific community is aware that around the world, thousands of years ago, the North Star was, I can't think of the name of it, but it's in Draco. It's like Draco Epsilon, or one of the stars in Draco was the North Star. It may be Thuban, or I don't know which one it is. Thuban, one is the South Star and one was the North Star. One was the ancient North Star, one was the ancient South Star. But for whatever reason, we know for a fact now that Polaris is a North Star, and I think it's 15 degrees off from Draco. And there's no way to explain that. It's obvious. It's so obvious, and it's so undeniable that the scientists had to come up with an explanation for that. So their explanation is that the Earth is slowly moving over the gazillions of years of human evolution. Well, we know that the carvings that speak of the shift were all made just before Jesus' death. After Jesus' death, we have star charts because people, that's how navigators would find their way across the planet, by star charts. Even if you're in the middle of the Mediterranean, you can't see land. And so they had to follow the stars to get them home or get them to their destination. And we know that prior to Jesus' death, every star chart that exists, Earth-wide, this is China, Central America, Europe, the Middle East, they all indicated that Draco was the star in Draco was the North Star. That was the star that never moved. And just in case, that's what that means. The North Star is the Earth is spinning, so all the stars seem to be whizzing by, but there's always one star at the North Pole and one that's south that doesn't move because that's the axis of the Earth. As the Earth is spinning, you're not seeing the movement. So back in the ancient past, it was the one in Draco. Now it's the Polaris. Well, when Jesus died, there was an earthquake. 3 days later, there was another earthquake. And from that moment on, Earth-wide, the North Stars, or charts indicating where the North Star was, changed. Now, that doesn't support the scientist version of billions of years of slow movement. That indicates a rapid shift.
Right. Now, when you say around the Earth, you're talking about like around the outside edge, right?
Flat Earth? Hey, look, I'm trying to make that work. I'm a pretty open-minded guy, and when people were sending me their theories about flat Earth, I thought, well, let me look into this because I'm just a man. I don't know everything. I know that I can go onto some government website about where the stars are located, and they're always right. They can tell you, like this eclipse we just had. They've been talking about this eclipse for 150 years because there are charts. You can go online, type in eclipse chart. It will tell you where every eclipse has happened in the last 100 years and where every eclipse is going to happen in the next 100 years. And that will always be true unless God does something to alter the position of our planet in a radical way. And so I went and looked at all the information from the Empire about where the stars are supposed to be, why we say they're supposed to be there, why the sun is where it is, why the Earth is why our days are 24 hours long, and everything they said made mathematical sense. You could get a piece of paper and a pencil and do the math, and it would work. And then I went and looked at everything I could get, and I did this for like 3 years. I was looking at every flat Earth website I could find, and until I had tested every possible theory, and I have never once, in all that time, found a single thing that is available on a flat Earth website that matches what you can actually experience. So they say the sun is in a certain place at a certain time. You go do the math. It ain't there. It can't be there. It can't work. That just is ridiculous. And so, for me, I like to believe in stuff that the majority doesn't believe in. That's me. That's who I am. But I don't like being a fool. If this stuff absolutely cannot be made to work on paper, why would you leave something that does work on paper?
Right. Well, and the thing is I got into a discussion on Facebook one day and with somebody, and the one video that I've always been able to provide anybody except for this individual as proof was there's a video on YouTube of I think she was like a tour guide that was down in Ecuador, and she had a sink and a bucket and some leaves, and what she did is she filled up the sink with water, she put the leaves in the sink and put the bucket under it and just pulled the plug, and of course on one side of the hemisphere, it went one way. In the middle, it went straight down. On the other side, it went the other way. And so his claim was it was trickery. It was about how she poured the water in and the side she put the leaves on. And so I said, okay, how about toilets? How are you telling me that every single toilet that's designed on the planet is designed in a manner to trick us into believing that the Earth is round when it's flat? So they put that much effort into a toilet, and of course he tried to dismiss that as much as possible. And somebody else had came up with had started talking about when you're in a plane and you see the curvature of the Earth. They were trying to say, okay, well, put a plate down on the table and kind of look down at it at an angle, and what does the edge look like? Now, I get that, and I understand that, but that is that's actually incorrect when it comes to an object that is I don't know how big around the Earth is, but you know, when you're looking at a plate, say just a plate on a table in front of you, you are the bigger object looking down on the smaller round object. So even though it's flat, yeah, you will see a curve in there. But when you're talking about us and the Earth, we are nothing but a speck of dust in the size of the planet. And if you were actually looking at the same angle from the same altitude at the Earth being a speck of dust, it wouldn't look curved. It would actually look flat. So,
well, I was looking at just on the basics. I'm a sailor. I was at sea for 6 years, and I know that when we would go from like up north, like Norfolk, Virginia. Norfolk, Virginia is, I don't know, it's way outside of the tropics, but we cross over to Rota, Spain, and it would take us, I don't even remember, like 10 days or something. But that's because our ship was an old, antiquated oil tanker. We were the slowest ship in the fleet, so we would go over with the carrier group. The carrier could obviously go much faster than us. Certainly the cruisers could, but they had to go our speed because you've got to travel the speed of the slowest ship in the group. And so that was it. We'd take 10 days. Now, if you are on a sphere Earth, well, on the other side of the Earth, it's going to take you the same amount of time to go from, like, Brazil to whatever, so South Africa, right? But on a flat Earth, that's like exponentially bigger because this is the circle you've got to travel around up by Virginia. On flat Earth, this is the circle you've got to travel around when you're by Brazil.
Right.
And it would still take us 10 days. And I knew we were going the same speed because we had to go our max speed everywhere we went. We had to go max speed. The only time we went slow is if we were parking the ship next to the beach or something.
Right. And pilots, back in the day when they used to hand plot their flight charts, they would actually, like in the Northern Hemisphere, when they would be, say, flying from the U.S. to, let's say, Europe or something like that, they would actually make an upward arc. They would actually go kind of northeast, so to speak, and then they would come back down, and kind of go southeast. And they did that arc because that conserved so much fuel because, of course, it is a round Earth. It is a sphere.
Yeah, well, I've looked at all of the stuff about. I've never drove an airplane before. I don't even like riding in them when somebody else is driving. But I've looked at all of the like real time stuff. Like I go to real time NASA and real time avionics, and I watch the flight paths of airplanes, watch flight paths of satellites, and everything they say, that the Empire says is going to happen happens. The planes go where they say they're going to go. Their routes make sense according to a spherical Earth. And then you go to the flat Earth sites and they tell you some kind of ridiculous story about people going the opposite direction to go shorter distance. It's just so silly and so fake. It's beyond fake. It's ridiculous.
Oh, yeah, I agree.
Hey, one of the things I want to bring out is like I'll try to drag everybody that's involved with Sustenance and Covering over here for the interview. My friend Us a lot of people have been asking about him because he's not doing the podcast right now. Well, he and I have been talking for years, and we've been doing things together for years, and we both figured out that I can't make videos anymore because I don't have time to do the podcast and the live stream and write a book and produce videos. So videos was the thing that I dumped. Usamos is trying to write. He's actually trying to write a script. I think he wants me to produce it because I've got the camera and all. And so he's writing. That's the reason he hasn't been around. The reason he's not around today is that we didn't really plan this well. He's in England. Their time is different. He's not at home right now, and so he's not here. But right now with me is Aletoledo. Aletoledo is like the tech guy for Sustenance and Covering. He sets up all of this stuff that I do, and he maintains the website. And in fact, that's one of the things Usamos does is he maintains the Facebook page. So, but since it's just my picture here, a lot of people may think it's just you and me. But Aletoledo's here right now. Say hello, Aletoledo.
Oh, hey everybody. I'm just kind of in the background. I think most people like to hear your voice. So you have the radio quality voice.
It's amazing how that works. When I hear myself talk, I just feel terrible because it sounds so bad. And I listen to your voice, and I'm like, man, I wish I could talk like Aletoledo. And apparently, he feels the exact opposite of me.
I think that's true with a lot of people. And yeah, I see Al participating in your chat when I'm actually over there while you're live. And I just got to let you know I'm like a village idiot, so don't pay much attention to when I say weird things over in Sustenance's chat.
No, actually, it's been quite tame. So maybe out of all the live streams he's done, I think there's only been one person that's kind of gotten out of line and had to be kicked out. But other than that, everybody's just kind of interacting with everybody else.
That's great. That's absolutely great.
Hey, years ago, I think when I first did I think it was about the time I did the All Seeing Eye series. That's probably 5 years ago. You interviewed me. I don't know why you interviewed me or how you found my channel or any of that, because at the time I think I had 11 subscribers. and I remember when it was done, I thought, man, this guy, this. I didn't at the time. I'm like, oh, one of those computer nerds wants to interview me. Okay, and him and his mom can listen to this after he gets finished making it. But you've got quite a following, and in fact, today somebody tried to Skype me right before I came here. And I said, well, I'm preparing for an interview with the Watchman News. And she goes, oh, wow, fantastic and wonderful. I watched or listened to the Watchman News all the time. And it was all capital letters, and underneath she wrote in small letters. I had to use capitals because I was hollering.
That's awesome. Yeah, we run quite a different ship over on our channel. It's and that's what I seen in you, by the way. It was your drive. It was your dedication to find out the truth. You weren't happy with what was being spoon-fed you, and you knew there was more to it. And you do what it takes, to go the extra mile to find out what the truth is. And so that's what caught my attention with you. Anybody that approaches anything with an open mind and just a will to learn, I run with that, because that's kind of a rare thing today. It seems like much of society would rather have somebody just tell them what's going on.
I think we all do, and here's my take on it, for what it's worth. Some of us are directly connected to the Holy Spirit. Not the church Holy Spirit, but the real Holy Spirit. The Holy Spirit that people wish they could be connected to, or people want you to believe they're connected to. You go to church and I'm filled with the Holy Spirit, the Holy Ghost. They don't have a clue. But some of us do. And we don't have a clue. We know we feel something nudging us. There's something that we're following, and because of that, everything that other people are following makes us sick. We don't want to be part of the system. We don't want to go to a cubicle every day and stare at a screen and press a button every now and then. And those people look at us like we're freaks. Like, why in the world would you want to be free? I mean, what would you do? I've got family members. I talk to my brother all the time about quitting his job. He's so sick. My brother's so sick, he can barely function. And his doctor says they can get him on disability. My brother says, what am I going to do? Just sit at home? I'm like, yeah. What? Well, no, you don't want to do that. Just after they stop paying you, just go to work anyway.
Right.
I don't know why people feel that people think that they are worthless unless they can associate themselves with something that's valuable, and they perceive the system as valuable. They perceive their job, their credit score, their college education, their government affiliations, their football team affiliations. Just all of that silly stuff is what adds to their self-worth. I can't even imagine existing like that. That just it blows my mind that there are people that are that sad.
That reminds me of a picture I saw today of somebody celebrating their inauguration into citizenship of the U.S. and they were so proud, and they had to show their certificate and their new passport, and it was like, look at my accomplishment, and it was basically just becoming a member of the club.
It's like, this is nothing like being a citizen of France. It's like they got a flag, they've got a national bird, they've got a capital, they've got money. What difference? How could it possibly be different?
Oh, right. Especially, right now in the U.S., I've been a citizen all my life. This is the only place I've ever lived. And I'm trying to find out how not to be a citizen anymore of the United States. So, I've said it jokingly, but there's actually a bit of seriousness in my mind when I say it. I would definitely, without a doubt, I would move to Russia. I would accept citizenship there, just because I what I see going on over in Russia right now is more in the lines of the spirit of the founders of the United States. It seems like they're kind of they're reining in the bad stuff, and people, especially our media here in the U.S., plays that out in a bad light. But they're actually trying to stop a virus from spreading over there, and while the U.S. is encouraging the same thing. It's crazy.
I'll tell you what. This is my take on Russia. It's not the empire. It's one of the slave states of the empire. In the ancient past was Egypt. Egypt eventually kind of collapsed and was replaced by Assyria. Assyria kind of collapsed and was replaced by Phoenicia. Phoenicia was replaced by Greece. Greece by Rome. Rome by England. England by the U.S. And there's a definite pattern that you can follow. Whereas everybody outside of Egypt had long hair, dreadlocks, and beards, but in Egypt they cut their hair, right? Same thing with Assyria. You go into Assyria right around the time that Egypt collapsed, suddenly everybody in Assyria starts shaving their heads and cutting their beards off. And, people outside of that, like the Babylonians, they had long dreadlocks and big beards. And along with that, there's a predatory bird. There's always obelisks, there's always pyramids, there's always all-seeing eyes in the empire. Russia, they're following along and doing what America tells them, but in general, they're just a slave state. They're not really the core of the empire. You can go on that. This is another big difference, and you can see Americas every day from the United States of cops walking up to people and asking them a few questions and then shooting them. And if you go to Russia, there'll be people like in a barroom fight, and the cops will come along and they get in the fight, and when it's over with, it's like the cops are all beat up and the guys in the barroom fight are all beat up, and they get up and shake hands and go home. That's completely different.
Yeah,
in our country, everybody in that bar would be dead except the cops.
Well, you brought up an interesting topic in there, and I think it's probably a good question to ask. Now, in the Bible, I can find contradicting scripture when it comes to hair. Now, some parts in the Bible will tell you that men need to wear their hair short, and I forget the actual verbiage that's used. And then I look at things like Samson and the power that his hair had given him. What is obviously you go with the dreadlocks. So would you explain the truth behind the hair thing, if I'm asking the question correctly?
Yes, I would love to explain that. Oh, it was a simple question. That was a great place to take a break because I got this one.
Next time you can bring a bottle.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Well, that's you're not far behind me, buddy. I'm 55. What are you? Well, never mind. You don't want to talk about your age, I'm sure. But yeah, this is just part of the system. This is part of the progression of time. You get to where you're going to the bathroom all the time. Sleep gets disturbed. You know, arthritis, all that kind of stuff.
Back to the topic though, when we were talking about different nations and everything. One thing I've always thought about from a biblical standpoint is how God separated all the nations, or broke apart the tribes of Jews into the different nations, and then they will not ever come back together until the appointed time. Do you think that's still true today, or is that something just from Old Testament times?
Well, if you go back and look at the stories of the Bible, there's like series of events that took place. We got the creation account, and that involved Adam and Eve, and then kind of after that, nothing happened until the flood. So then you've got this microcosm of the flood. The flood, the Nephilim, and the kings of the earth, and then Noah's family. And then after that, you come to the era of the patriarchs. Then you come to the era of the judges, and after the judges comes the kings. And then once that was over, you had the era where Babylon takes over as the ruler of the world. Well, after that, you've got Jesus, and then after Jesus is the time of the apostles. But if you go look, the very first story sounds a lot like the second story. The second story sounds like the third story, and the third. So it's like it's a story played out by this group of actors, and then the next story comes along. It's the same story played by a different group of actors. And so when you get to the nation of Israel, all of that is, those nations are basically like actors. And they're doing the same thing that had been done earlier, and they're doing the same thing. 12 tribes, and then you get 12 apostles. And you get to the book of Revelation, there's 12 foundation stones. So what they're doing isn't so much about the separation between nations on the earth. It's about the 12 groupings of people that were involved in the ancient past. And the Bible doesn't give a whole lot of information about that, but we do know that there were humans, right? And they're on the earth, and that there were angels that came to the earth from somewhere else. Doesn't say the angels all came from the same place. They may have come from 11 different places. Who knows? So you've got this separation that's supposed to exist between all of the species that are in this solar system. And so on Earth, God reenacted that by making a separation between the different tribes. That's some crazy out there stuff, ain't it? But that's why y'all love me, so don't even act like I'm crazy.
Oh, that's why. That's exactly why. You are way beyond outside of the box, and that's what I welcome, because if you think inside of the box in this world today, you are never going to know the truth about anything.
Because you think about it, it's the empire. That's what it is. It's the empire versus God, God's kingdom versus Satan's empire. Well, what's part of Satan's empire? It's government, right?
Right.
It's the economic system. It's the military. It's the styles of clothing. It's the haircuts. It's the religions. It's the hatreds. All of that stuff is outside of God's kingdom. And so if you're getting your information from any of those sources, it's got to be 180 degrees out from truth. That means the government's going to be lying. The economic system is going to be lying. The religions are going to be lying. And, in fact, if a religion were to tell the truth, they would be squelched. In some way or another, they would be put out of their misery. That we've got a lot of religions that were persecuted over the years that are just not, they're only microscopically different than the other religions, but they got persecuted because that kind of built up their street rep, their street credits. So they get to come out and say, well, we were persecuted in the 1940s, and so obviously we have Jesus' blessing. But the reality is, if they had Jesus' blessing, if they really were God's people. They would have been completely exterminated, put into, they'd be in, concentration camps or reservations or slave labor camps or prisons.
Right.
I guess now that we're back, we need to get back on that question you asked, and then maybe you could I'll send you the audio, and Aletoledo send you his audio, and you can figure out how all this can go together. But yes, I would like to talk about why the Bible seems to contradict itself on the subject of hair, and why I have this kind of hair as opposed to the kind of hair that you would normally see down at the Baptist church. Our Bibles were not written in English. They were written in other languages. And what those other languages are, I wouldn't want to speculate. The oldest copies we've ever found of any of the Bible books are always in what are called Greek, Hebrew, and Aramaic. Well, what that means, ancient Paleo-Hebrew, which is kind of like Egyptian. Once the Egyptian went to a phonetic alphabet. What they call Aramaic is actually Babylonian. For years, anytime you bought a Bible dictionary, it would be called Hebrew, Greek, and Chaldee. Then they decided to call it Aramaic. But the reality is Babylonian. And the reason that the churches say Babylonian is because that's what Jesus spoke. And no one wants to worship a Jesus that spoke Babylonian. But back to the subject, our Bibles have been translated from those languages, and at every possible juncture where the Bible could be translated in a way that could manipulate people, the empire did it. There's just an example is that when Jesus was talking about Satan and his empire, and when the end of the world would come, he said, well, wherever you see the eagle, that's where you're going to find the corpses. Well, that was a direct prophetic reference to the United States, the eagle. That you pick up a Bible and you read that verse in English, it says, wherever the vulture is, you will see corpses. And most people are willing to accept that because that's what we see in our real life. If there are corpses, there's going to be vultures on them. But that word is eagle. It's like agelos or something. It's used in the Bible multiple times, and in every case it's translated as eagle except that one verse, because the empire has figured out a way to disguise what that verse is about. They don't want you to know that they are the bad guys. And it's the same thing with hair. Obviously, all Christian churches require haircuts. People that don't get their hair cut are mistreated, and so they had to put something in the Bible to make it seem like that God likes haircuts. So if you go back and you read about Samson and his dreadlocks giving him strength, and you read about how men are told not to trim their beards, and you read about how men had long hair, and then suddenly out of the blue, Paul says, anyone who looks at a man with long hair knows it's dishonorable. So what does Christendom do? They take and reject the 200 or 300 scriptures about long hair and beards, and they embrace this one verse where Paul is absolutely commanding Christians to shave and get a haircut. Well, if you read the whole account, it's not quite that simple. Paul was a Pharisee. He was fully aware of the law of Moses. In fact, that was his life, the law of Moses. Over and over again, he talks about the law of Moses. Well, one of the laws of Moses was that if someone wanted to be a Nazirite, now Samson was a Nazirite, many men were Nazirites, that they had to be above and beyond what other people were. So people that were regular people could touch bodies, human bodies. And Nazirites were not. They were not allowed to touch dead bodies. Other people could engage in agriculture. Nazirites were not allowed to engage in agriculture. Not because they were trying to make them suffer. It's because God wanted his Nazirites to be clean of the filth that normal people would indulge in. And so one of the other things the Nazirite had to do is not cut his hair. But when he started his Naziriteship, he had to go to the temple, shave his hair off, throw it under the altar, and burn it. And from that moment on, he could never shave his hair again unless he took a temporary Nazirite vow and just said, I will be a Nazirite for 5 years or whatever. But in general, someone who was a Nazirite did that for life. So they would shave their heads, throw it under the altar, burn it, and from then on never cut their hair again. Well, Paul, the man that they quote, saying it's dishonorable for men to have long hair, Paul went down, and it says very clearly that he took the vow. And so he took along with him 3 men who shaved their heads and threw their hair under the altar. It's like it's the no-brainer what they were doing. They were taking the Nazirite vow, the vow to never again shave their hair. So it doesn't make sense that Paul would command people to get a haircut, right? Well, when Paul said that, what he said, he started the conversation, like a chapter earlier in the Bible, and he says, I go all over the place and people dishonor me. No matter where I go, I'm dishonored. But when I come to Corinth, you people are honored. So what's the problem here? I'm dishonored, but you are honored. I am in poor standing in the community, but you're in good standing in the community. And he uses that word honor and dishonor over and over again until he gets to the part of hair, and he says, it's obvious that men with long hair are dishonored. So what he's telling these people is, why are you cutting your hair in order to get honor from the wicked empire? That's the only verse they got to support their haircuts. And so it's very easy if you just read the Bible, keep an open mind, don't believe any of the garbage that the churches teach. You can see that Paul, at the time, was a Nazirite, probably had really long dreadlocks because it had been 4 or 5 years since he took the vow. And he's in front of these people saying, why in the world do you people cut your hair?
That's interesting because that you said that, because I was often hung up on that because I didn't understand. I just didn't understand. See, when I read Corinthians is what I love to read that. I read it over and over and over. And Paul seems to be so on target with his message in Corinthians, and so that always made me wonder why Paul had a different view. You know what I'm saying? It's like the piece that didn't fit.
Yeah, that's right. He's we look at Paul, everything you see about Paul, he was like a true empire subject. He cut his hair. He got a degree from college, had a good credit score. He was keeping up with his mortgage, all that kind of junk. But if you read the Bible, he was like a guy that was at the top of his game. He was doing everything the empire asked him, and he walked away from it. And he became he went from being a model citizen to being a caveman. No one wants to talk about that.
Yeah, that's interesting that you say that. I mean, honestly, I didn't even realize that Paul was a Pharisee, and that he was because when I think of Paul, all I see is Corinthians, to be honest. I mean, that's what I see is Corinthians.
They say that Paul's writings are difficult to understand. I mean, that's in the Bible. The Bible says Paul is difficult to understand. But if it's in its original Greek and your Greek, it's not that difficult. But by the time Greek gets to English, it's bizarre. It's bizarre because they could easily have translated that exactly right, where Paul, you could see the emotions when he's begging these people, please, please, stop trying to fit in with this filthy world. Stop cutting your hair. But in English it comes out, please, please stop being disgusting indigenous people, and go do your job and keep your mouth shut like everybody else.
Wow. I'm gonna have to. That's one bit of scripture that I haven't looked at in my purple Bible that I have, and I'm gonna have to do that. I wonder where that is, where he talks about that. Do you know offhand? Otherwise, I can Google it. 1 Corinthians and 2 Corinthians together are only like 20 pages, so It's not a big deal to read the whole thing. Right. Yeah, I'll have to do that again. Now, this Bible, it's hard for me to read because a lot of the stuff has been translated back in, well, I should say untranslated, and put back into Hebrew. So there's
Look at all of those kind of the Bibles that they've got out there that restore all of the Jewish names. I guess that you could get something out of them, and I'm not going to tell people not to read them, but we're English, we speak English, I don't want to find out about how Noah built an ark, I grew up with Noah building an ark, so I'm cool with that. Or Moshe took his people out of Egypt. It's not important to know how to pronounce his name, because those people don't know how his name was pronounced. Aletoledo and I both, we've talked about this before, and without even knowing it, both of us subscribe to the English Standard Version of the Bible. It's just basic. It's not really like as fun to read as a Good News Bible, or what is it? The Living Bible is kind of paraphrased. It's obviously paraphrased, but it's kind of technical, and it's accurate. It's more accurate than most Bibles. And so if you can get your hands on it, you can just go online and look it up and read it. Because like I say, it's not that many pages. It's, you can read it online pretty easy, pretty short time. Maybe an hour you could read both books.
Oh, yeah. Like I said, I've read them several times, but usually when I've read them, honestly, I think I don't know if I've used the NIV or the King James. I'm going to have to check out that English Standard for sure.
One thing I'd like to mention is that one of the best things about SustenanceNCovering is that he brings out certain aspects that should be talked about, but really haven't been brought up by religion in the past for some reason. For example, this whole thing about Paul being a Pharisee. What church are you going to go to and listen to a sermon where they even mention this fact? And then so once we gain this idea of, oh, that's right, Paul was a Pharisee. So where does that lead us to next, and how do we use that to interpret, the words he spoke and the context it was all in? So I think it's just fascinating to see what things, what little gems we can find that just help us to, take us to a further understanding.
Yeah, it's difficult for me. It's like every day I come up, I'm reading something and I'm like, wow, everybody needs to know this. And then 10 minutes later, wow, everybody needs to know this. And then we do our podcast and our live stream once a week after having 100 of these things go into my head, and we bring out one or two of them during the podcast. So that, I wish that I could just, every time I have an idea in my head, just like press a button on my head and upload that to the web so everybody else could see it. But I don't do that. Here's some connections that you might not be aware of, but I think are pretty good connections. The word Pharisee, it's like to adjust. It means to adjust. These were the men who adjusted. So they had civilization there, and when someone got out of line, the Pharisees handled it. Somebody comes along and they didn't give a tenth of the mint. You bring them out in the public square and make an announcement. This guy held back his mint. That's what they did. They were adjusters. But remember, when Jesus was on earth, one of the things he said, well, the apostles say the apostles were bringing small children to Jesus, and then the people were bringing small children. The apostles said, "Get them out of here. The teacher doesn't need to be talking to small children." And Jesus said, "No. Let the children come, because unless a person becomes like children, they can never enter the kingdom of heaven." Well, I went back and looked at that, and it doesn't say children. It says infants, babies. And the Greek word for babies is paideron, or paedron, paides, something like that. And that word means one who must be chastised. So basically, the Pharisees are the chastisers. They're the ones who make babies become citizens. Jesus was saying, you're not worth anything once you become a citizen. So when he said, let the small children come to me, he actually said, let the babies come to me. And it's not my own interpretation. If you go back and look at that word, it's used throughout the Bible. It always means baby. There's not one scripture in the Bible where that could mean small children, because like Jesus was brought to the temple at 8 days old when he was paidion. So that's a baby. 8 days old is paidion. John the Baptist was circumcised at 8 days old when he was a paidion, baby. 8 days old is not a small child. That's a baby.
Right, right. That's interesting too. And like Al had mentioned, that is one of the reasons why I love to watch your videos, and sometimes I'll watch one, two, and three times just to make sure, because you always miss something. And well, not you, but meaning me. When I watch a video, I always miss something, and so there's many times I'll go over just one video several times to catch as many of those bits as possible, because they're very revealing, and I mean, I'm still in awe of your the series that you've been doing, and much of it is about the falsehoods of flat Earth, and the way that the solar system is arranged, and how it was arranged versus today, and that stuff is just, like I say, I'm in awe about that stuff, because it really it puts a different light on it that I've never heard anybody ever speak of, and it's the only thing that is even possible to fit. You do a good job of explaining. It's hard for me to even explain it, but how it is that they seen different planets at different sizes, or this and that. It's just very, very interesting, and it's well, for me, it reaffirms a lot of the beliefs or the thoughts that I've had, and it's rather interesting, actually.
Well, you think about all of the things that are in the Bible that your church never explains to you. If you go and you hear about, if you're in a church and for some reason the preacher accidentally turns to the wrong page and he starts reading to you about the stones and Aaron's breastplate, take and make a breastplate and put 12 sockets, and in those sockets have the light pass through, whereby the sockets are in this order: 1, amethyst; 2, turquoise; 3, and it's like, what does that mean? Why was it so important that God dedicate like 5 pages of his Bible to explaining how these stones are supposed to be put into this breastplate on the high priest? It makes no sense. Well, they just go, the churches are, if you ask a preacher, they're like, the eloquent design of the fabulous functionary precautions that are flung upon the nation of Israel remind us of the beauty of, I'm like, come on, man, that don't mean nothing. That don't mean nothing. If you look at it, Aaron was playing the part of the moon. Very obviously, he's supposed to be the moon. Moses goes up on the mountain. He comes down with a light coming out of his face that's so bright no one can look at it. And so Moses and Aaron go into the tent of meeting, and they walk around each other for a while Moses looks at this breastplate on Aaron. And you think, well, that's got to have something to do with the relationship between the sun and the moon. Well, if you go back in the ancient past, the Bible very clearly says, the Bible in English clearly says that the floodgates of the heavens opened up. If you look at it in Hebrew, it says the sky window was shattered as if struck. Well, this sky window gets mentioned throughout the Bible, and it's actually the feature that flat earthers say is the dome over flat earth. But it really is there. There really was, around our planet, this feature made up of ice. Or as the book of Revelation says, it was called the Sea of Crystal. Well, that's not what it says. In original Greek, it says the hard, transparent ocean. The hard, transparent ocean can only be ice. Oceans are made of water, and if it's hard, it's frozen. So we know how raindrops cause rainbows. If we go back and look at the story of the flood, prior to the flood, there's no mention of a rainbow. And then after the flood, Noah gets off the ark, and God says, well, from now on, just so you know, there's never going to be another flood. There'll always be a rainbow in the cloud. See, before that, the rainbow was on the moon, because light going through the sea of glass, this sky window, would have landed directly on the moon. And depending on the angle of the moon, like what time of the year it was, it would be a different color 12 times a year. So every month, the moon would be of a different color. And that makes sense. And I can make a video about that, and a dozen people from the Greek Orthodox Church come to my channel, and you'd think they'd be getting down on their knees and in prayer with tears coming out of their eyes, thanking God for finally explaining those verses to them. And they'll tell me, my preacher says it's the elaborate function of the wonderful glory of the honor. Come on, man. Is that what religion is to you? Come on. And that's the way the world works, man. If you got a big, beautiful, shiny church and a bunch of guys in there wearing costumes, you know, who would want to walk away from that to listen to some goofy old man in the swamp?
Here, sorry. No, I'm here. Sorry, I ran to the other room. I'm gonna
I thought maybe you just like dozed off.
Yeah, I've got to wrap up here soon. I've got some other things I got to get done.
Oh, we're over our hour, even if you consider my bathroom break.
Alrighty, well, if you'd like, go ahead and close it up.
Okay, how do I close up something that doesn't belong to me? Well, I hope that you've enjoyed this interview on the Watchman News, and as always, if you do not wish to survive, don't listen to us.
Right on. Thank you for taking your time to do this, Sustenance.
Hey, anytime, man. Anytime we got like where me and Aletoledo are off on a weekday and you want to get together and do this, and in fact, it doesn't have to be a weekday. If you've got anything comes up that you think would make a good show, just let us know. We'll do it. I mean, obviously it took us, 2 months from the time I said I would do this till we got to doing it, but that ain't a big deal.
Right on, and thank you very much for coming out.
Okay, talk to you guys later.
All right, we'll talk to you later.
Bye-bye.